Well, hi everybody. I'm Beatty Confredos, and welcome again, my friends, to the Ask Beatty Show. And the theme song of today's show is that the world needs now is love, sweet love. And I think now more than ever, there's so much divisiveness and polarization, and we are really going to have to find better ways to come together, to talk, to try to work things out, to negotiate, and if at all possible, to come up with relatively sane win-win resolutions. And we're going to be talking a lot about this later on in the show with my husband, the love of my life, who's a sociologist and criminologist. And he happens to be the host of the Radical Imagination here on the Progressive Radio Network, and also on MNN Television, and also on LTV television in the Hamptons. Well, I am a psychotherapist and a sex therapist. I'm the advice columnist for dance papers in the Hamptons in New York City and Palm Beach. I've been in the national radio and television world for many, many years. And I think of all the things that I do, although I have to say I love all the different things that I do, I think that the people that I treat in my private practice, and I've treated thousands of people over the past 35 years, that has given me an enormous amount of satisfaction in helping people who contact me with issues ranging from depression, anxiety, substance abuse of various different kinds, sexual problems, and of course, relationship and family problems as well. And I think it speaks so much to people who are giving themselves permission to say, enough is enough. I've been feeling depressed for too long, for too many months, and for many, for too many years. And to be able to take that step. And it's a very important step, and it's not an easy step to take, to say to yourself that I am willing. I'm finally willing, as best as I can, to acknowledge and address and resolve the issues that continue to get in the way of my life and my relationships. And the fact is, and we all know this, that if we're not in a good place ourselves, it's very difficult to be able to find and maintain relationships with other people. So in reality, it really starts with us, so that if you are someone who has been struggling with a variety of different issues. Today is a new day. And that was something that my dad used to tell me all the time. Today is a new day with new possibilities. We can't change yesterday. We can't change something that happened years ago. But today we can take a stance. And we can try and figure out, with or without help, the path that we need to take that will take us in a direction where we're going to be able to experience happiness and joy and rid ourselves of the angst and the depression and the anxiety that continues to really rob us every single day of our happiness. And I know that it is not an easy task. And people ask me, all the time, what is the Ask Beauty show about? Well, I have to tell you that when I first met with Gary Nellen, I'm going into I thought it was year 14, but I think it's year 13 in hosting the Ask Beauty show. Initially, we were hoping that this show was going to be a call-in counseling show, because I had hosted a number of different call-in counseling shows on major networks. And I think initially people were calling in, but with the pandemic and the way life is going for so many people, what's happened instead, it has not turned into the old call-in counseling show that I used to love and host, but I have interesting guests, and I'm always hoping that the issues and topics that I decide to discuss, whether it's with a guest or whether it's just with you and me alone, that these are topics and issues and subjects that are resonating with you. So, for example, if you have anything at all that you would like me to discuss, all you have to do is go to beattycone.com and all my contact information is there. And I would be happy to tackle some of the issues and some of the subjects that are really, really important for you. Because after all, these shows are really for you. They're not for the hosts. You know, we're always hoping that we're going to be able to impart information to you that will really help you to improve the quality of your life and the quality of your relationship physically, mentally, psychologically, and psychologically and psychiatrically as well. And every single week, I ask you to do some real introspection. And I think it's important. I think it's really important that we are honest with ourselves and we take a look at our mental health. And again, you need to be honest. And if you're finding that you are on a good path, you know, congratulations to you for doing the things that you need to do to keep yourself feeling good and strong and relatively happy every single day. Of course, nothing is perfect and nobody feels happy every single day, but if you're on the right path, you're obviously doing the right things. But for those of you who may not be, you know, the real question then becomes what to do. I mean, we can complain, we can hope, we can dream, but it takes a mindset and it takes the action. It takes the action to help us get to where we want to go. And of course, I say this all the time, is that we don't need to navigate the ups and downs of life on our own. And hopefully most of you have, you know, some friends, supportive family, because it's true. It takes a village. And if you're finding that you are alone and disconnected, I hope that you will give yourself permission to reach out and get some good professional help. And that does not mean that you're going to have to be in therapy for 1,000 years. And then, of course, I ask people and I ask you to take a look at your relationships, your family relationships, your collegial relationships, your love relationships, your friend relationships. And I think again, it's very important that we are honest with ourselves about how well or how badly these relationships are working. And again, there's no perfect relationship. There are always going to be ups and downs. But the real question then becomes, if things are off track, what to do, what to do. We need to communicate. We need to communicate to the people in our lives where there are issues. And hopefully you have people in your lives who are willing, who are able, who have the skills, who have the openness, and who have the wisdom and the intelligence to want to work things out. And if you don't, then we need to, all of us, reassess who we have in our life. And I've been saying this for years. I have, in my personal life and in my professional life, a zero toxicity policy. That means no poison, not only no poison when it comes to foods, but no poison when it comes to people. And, you know, one of the things that I oftentimes say is that a little bit of poison is still poison. So it's important, and it's not easy to evaluate our relationships on an ongoing basis. And the ideal, of course, is to try and work things out. And hopefully you have people in your life who share that kind of a mindset. And if they don't, then again, the question then becomes, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to engage in destructive and self-destructive relationships, because I think it's very easy. We can blame this one for doing this. And of course, I'm not talking about children. That's a whole different thing. But invariably, we have to ask ourselves the tough question, which is, are we enabling? Are we allowing people in our life to cross over that certain line? So the buck, in a way, it really does stop with us. And if you're needing a little nudge and you're needing a little help in dealing with some of the relationships in your life, again, it's a really, really good idea. Of course, if you could talk to friends and family, that's great. But if you need a little bit of extra help, reaching out to a qualified practitioner can really make all the difference in the world. And what about things like substance abuse of various different kinds? And some people that really be in denial. In fact, recently I've been treating a young man, and he swears to me, he doesn't have an alcohol problem. However, what happened a couple of weeks ago, he was out of town and got into a fist fight with his brother. And we were talking about this. I said, look, what happened? And he says, well, I had too many, glasses of whatever it was that he was drinking. And, we oftentimes rationalize and we'll say, well, I don't drink every day. But clearly, this young man has a problem, and fortunately, he's in therapy with me, and we are going to be dealing with a lot of denial that he has had over the years about his drinking and also his drug issue. And it takes a lot of courage for us to be honest with ourselves. And yet it is so critical. I mean, we can change. We have the capability of changing the trajectory of our life if we are honest with ourselves and if we are willing to deal with issues. Other things too, of course, we have to think about our physical health and making sure that we are eating well and getting sufficient sleep and exercising. And there's so many articles that are coming out on the importance of exercise. And it's not just to keep our bodies toned, and how exercise affects our cognition and our mood. And it's been very, very interesting to see whether or not this is translating. All this research, it's real bona fide research, is translating into people being serious about exercising on a very, very, very regular basis. So when I go through this segment every week, it's kind of like it's truth time. It's really, really truth time. And I think it's very easy for people to blame and deny and avoid and be defensive. And it does. It takes an enormous amount of guts and courage to be able to say to ourselves, we're off track. I'm off track here. I'm off track here, but I am committed. I am committed. I may not be so motivated today, but I am committed to making some changes so that I can live a better life. And I think that is what it is really, really about, right? So moving on. I found a very, very interesting article yesterday. And this is from, I think, a company is called Veg Out and the Art of Happiness, 8 Daily Habits that make life feel worth living. And I get a lot of these articles in my email, but this really resonated with me. And it starts with happiness isn't something you kind of stumble upon. Of course, sometimes people are luckier than others. It's something that we create through small daily habits, from moving our body, practicing gratitude, to nurturing relationships and making time for real rest. And they identified 8 different habits. And I love them. And I'd be very, very curious to hear what you think. And of course, the first one, interestingly, but not surprising, is the importance of moving our body, of exercising. And the science really backs it up that exercise releases endorphins, it lowers stress. I know that it really does for me, and improves focus. And it's just like hitting a reset button. So if you're somebody who has talked about exercising but just hasn't gotten quite to it, maybe today is the day that I will be successful in motivating you to do what is in your best interest. The second habit is practicing gratitude. How often do you tell people in your life that thank you, and I'm grateful for this or for that? It's really, really important, and I think that we need to be conscious of doing it a lot more. And of course, people appreciate so much when you thank them and when there is civility, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. Number three, remembering to spend time with people who lift you up. This is again making sure that your relationships are healthy and supportive and respectful. And we don't want to be around people who are destructive and who really rain on our parade. And we have a choice whether or not we are going to engage in these destructive and self-destructive relationships, or we are going to get to a point where we're saying we deserve better and enough is enough. So again, it's really, really important to find a core group of people who do lift you up. Number four, do something that you enjoy every day. It could be anything. It could be eating a cookie. It could be taking a walk around the block. But we all deserve to do things that make our life more enjoyable. So think about that. Number five is be present. And I think that that's something that more and more people are having difficulty doing. I was walking down the street today in New York City, and I literally almost bumped into a number of people who were just looking down. They were on their phones, they were hardly present. And I think it's important, not to just replay yesterday and 20 years ago and not worrying about tomorrow, even though sometimes that's really different and difficult to do, but trying very hard, at least for part of the time, to remain in the present. Just noticing that first sip of coffee, or just noticing, if you look out the window, the beauty of the sun and the clouds. And it really helps to center us. And what a great way to begin our days. Number six, keep learning. Let's not allow ourselves to become stagnant. Trying something new, doing something new. Because living, it's not just about comfort, although sometimes it's really, really easy to just want to stay in your comfort zone, but it's also about growth. So you have to figure out, we all have to figure out, what do we need to do that will help us grow, that will help us just really get to a place, where we feel that we're not just in a stagnant place. Number seven, and I love all of these, but I really like this one, giving more than you take. And the author was saying that one of the most surprising lessons that he's learned is that happiness often comes from giving and not getting. I mean, don't you feel good? Or I shouldn't assume it, of course, that when you're giving something, you're giving yourself to someone, that it really makes us feel so great. I know that as a psychotherapist and sex therapist, that has been, one of the things that I've said for years is that I think, I mean, I hope that thousands of people that have worked with me feel that I've helped them, but I have gotten so much from meeting wonderful people who've wanted to make changes in their life. And in the giving to these people, I think it has made me a much more generous human being. And finally, number eight, rest. Don't just recharge. I know that people are up in the middle of the night and they're looking at clips and they're looking at movies. And I think it's just really important. And the science absolutely bears this out. 8 hours of sleep, turn off your devices, give yourself and your body a chance to really recharge. So, of all of these things, and this is a question you can answer for yourself, how many of these things today have you been doing? And if you've been doing almost none of them, then today again is a new day. And you don't have to do everything at one time, but to begin one by one, to start to live your life, because this is about you, in ways that are really in your best interest. Well, as I promised you, I have a guest today. Um, a guest, of course, who I live with and love, and who's been on the show many times. You need to move in a little
Moving in.
closer, honey.
Okay,
Yeah.
we got it.
And as I previously said, that my husband, Jim Bredos, is a sociologist and a criminologist, and he's the host of the Radical Imagination right here on the Progressive Radio Network and on MNN Television, and also hosts a television show on LTV. So hello.
Here we are, good, great, wonderful to be here.
So
Yes,
we've been
yes,
talking a lot, Jim,
yes.
about how polarized people are
Yeah.
in their relationships politically
Yeah.
and personally and professionally.
Yes.
And it's destroying us.
Uh, Individually and collectively, as a country, as a world, and it raises that question again. How can we learn to live together more peacefully, more harmoniously? Um, Now, here's the kicker, though. In a world where you have people controlling others and exploiting people to do things that are making them more and more vulnerable, more and more angry, and so on. In other words, people are playing by different rules.
Right.
And yes, absolutely, we try to be as civil and carry on conversations. And
We do?
we try.
I think we
Yes, well,
I think we don't. That's part of the problem.
well, um, well,
Right?
well, we can make too much of civility. And by that I mean, uh, when you're playing by different rules and people are sometimes very viciously attacking you and trying to put you in your place,
Yes.
it's not so much a matter of accepting that and just being more gentle about it. So, for example, the civil rights movement, you did have peaceful, nonviolent protests that the sit-in, freedom riders, and so on, in the South, and they were met with viciousness, brutality, violence, as civilly as they tried to be. So there's a distinction made, and this was again an article just today, I guess, or yesterday in the New York Times. Civility is a Fantasy by Roxane Gay. And what she makes is a very, very important distinction. It's about healing. And she makes reference to, and let me read the last couple sentences she has.
Choose that
Well,
they want to heal.
but this is the way she puts it, very interestingly, to get to your point. She's giving an example of her boyfriend off on a war, fighting whatever the enemy and so on. And this girlfriend writes to the soldier and says, imploring him to come home and invoking the Hebrew concept, appropriately enough, as we're
In the Jewish New Year.
Jewish
Yeah,
Year
yeah.
here, and
In the middle of it.
right, in the middle of the high holy days and so on. The Hebrew concept but this applies to all kinds of people, the people from all religions and non believers as well. The concept of tikkun olam, the world will always be broken, repair it anyway. And Roxanne finishes her column here. I've not been able to get those words out of my head. We are at such a dangerous and delicate moment in American history. The onus is on all of us to reject the fantasy of civility in favor of repair. This country is broken, but that need not be permanent. So your point was well taken. Even though, right, that people are putting us in these positions and are paying by these different rules, we don't resort to their tactics to get down in the mud and so on. But yet we cannot just sit back in some sort of kind, smiling way into what is happening. So
Well,
it's a balance.
yeah, there's a
Isn't it?
balance, and of course, there's a huge power differential.
Absolutely.
And this is the
That's
thing, as you were speaking, if there is an employer,
right.
and he's coming down hard on an employee who is dependent
Yeah,
on that job to feed the children and to pay the rent. And if the
absolutely.
employer is an example, is not about tikkun olam, is not about repairing, is not about healing, is not about civility. I mean, people are being put in a very difficult and compromising position with sometimes not a lot of options.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. That's really the
Well,
problem.
well, you you attempt to build alternatives. You
Right.
you organize your fellow workers and so on.
Well,
I mean, that's one thing. Or you resist in various other ways, or you try
easier
not to be
said,
self-destructive, as you know.
easier said
Very
than
easy.
easier said than done.
First one to admit that.
And I was writing my article for Dan's papers. Actually, I was doing a draft, which I'm going to send to you as my editor, before I send it to the real editor. But I think that,
I'm the Unreal
you're
editor. Yeah, I'm the pre-editor.
wonderful
No,
editor
I
to
get
me. No, you are. But I was thinking about, because people ask me, and I think that my listeners, our friends, they're curious. People ask me all the time, Jim,
And this column is about what now?
The column is what to do when
Yeah.
people in your life have no desire to work things out. So it's like, again, what to do, what to do. But let me just
Yeah,
say that,
sure.
people ask me all the time, and they have for years, what do I think are the most important ingredients that make or break relationships? And I remember when I was first interviewed after my book came out, I'd pause because it wasn't sexy, it wasn't romantic, and it is emotional communication and problem solving. And when I was doing the column this morning, I was thinking of how important it is that we are able to find a way to assess as we get to know people, as we think about joining churches or synagogues or mosques, or having people in our lives, whether or not these different people and organizations actually prioritize communication and problem solving and healing and tikkun olam. Because the biggest mistake, and I think that people would agree, is that we waste a lot of time and energy on people who have no desire whatsoever to heal,
Mhm.
to repair it. I think it's very important. I oftentimes used to say, I wish I could fast forward people's conflicts and their relationships as they were getting to know each other, so that we could see early on, does the person who I think I'm in love with, is there the capability? Does this person have the capability and, of course, the skill and the desire and the mindset to want to work things out?
Yeah.
And I find that more and more people, Jim, don't. And
Well,
what to do.
okay. Well, as you were talking about that, of course, my mind started to go to our president.
Yes,
And it's not
right,
just him, but
right.
the tone. of the uncaring
Yes.
tone
Right.
of our culture has been growing,
Right.
well, not just the last year or two, but it's been building.
Right.
And we've never really dealt with efficiently and substantially some of our our past wrongs and
Right.
exploitations and so on, and racial disharmony and slavery and so on and so on. But we were making progress in the 60s. We at least began to start talking about it. Anyway, long story short, so we now are in the throes of an administration which we have seen for years. I mean, this is not any surprise. Donald Trump has been talking this way for
Yes.
decades.
He's
His
consistent.
actions are
He's
big.
very
He's
consistent.
consistent. And
Absolutely.
so people, had
Absolutely.
enough opportunity to
Yes.
praise this
Yes.
guy,
Yes.
and they put him in. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
so now we have a couple of issues. So we have a person who makes no bones about it. It's them versus us. He
Yes.
is not the president for all.
Right.
And
Right.
this is a fight.
Yes.
This
It's
is
a
it's
fight.
a fight to the death. And then, of course, he's collected all these people around him and allies who just play up to him in that way. So,
Fired and gotten rid of.
exactly. Banish people and
British people right and left.
so it depends, right? So this does play a part in terms of personal relationships, families,
Yes. Yes.
in larger sense, macro ways, economically, what people are experiencing in their everyday lives, as well as their workplace and so on. So again, what Roxanne Gay is talking about, and what we're talking about here, is that the Kunalum means that you don't let catastrophe have the final word, and that you
Right.
begin to, even in the midst of these very, very bleak times, um, offer and live out your life in a way that you show your integrity, your your concern, your love and care, as difficult as that may be.
But that means
Yeah,
finding people and
that's
seeking
true.
people out and assessing well
Yes,
whether or
yes,
not the people who you think you may want to connect with and marry and be in love with are the people that have the qualities that you're talking about, that we're talking
right.
about.
And then you make a very good point, Beatty, about how there are just circumstances, people, timing, whatever you want to call it. Well, that's going to be impossible. You're not going to be
That's
able to
right.
reach
Yeah,
certain segments,
right. Exactly.
and
And for me, it's
just
the
let it
same thing
go.
because
Work with who you can.
it is so
Right.
frustrating. Although the people who come to me are people who want to work things out. I mean, that's why they're there.
Generally, yes. I mean,
Yes,
but and then
yes.
bring in, well, this marital therapy.
They want to work things out.
Okay,
That's why they're there.
right.
The hope is that maybe we can work things out. But I want to move into something else, and that is family estrangement. Okay. And this is, apropos to what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And, when I was writing this morning, I was thinking, who could have ever imagined that 27%, almost 30%
Mm.
of adult children choose to be estranged from their families? Now, clearly, in certain circumstances, it's absolutely warranted. I mean, I have a situation right now where there is no going back. I mean, the abuse was and is, and it's so horrible and terrible that the person would have to be just out of her mind to want to go back into that sort of an environment. But I believe that in the majority of cases, that repair is possible. And for people who are listening right now, and if you happen to be estranged, from your adult children or from your parents, uh, family therapy is really the way to go to find a qualified family therapist, a neutral person, where the goal actually is to try to process what happened and what didn't happen and go through all of that, but to be able to come up with tikkun olam, where there is repair. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And one of the things that I have found with adult children who chose estrangement is that most have real regrets. Their parents die, something happens, and it was like, oh my, maybe I should have tried harder to, to come together. And if you're in one of these situations right now, life goes by very, very quickly, and we don't want to live a life of regrets. And if there's any way at all to repair these family relationships, I really, really urge you to try to do this, and to think long and hard before throwing your
Let
family
me ask you,
away.
I want to make sure I really understand this.
Yeah,
So you're saying what was it, 27, 29%
yes. Adult
are
children are estranged from
are
their
strange.
parents.
So
Yes.
within that group, how many do you think can really be salvaged in a sense? Or these are people that have really given up.
Yes, they've given up
So
for
almost a
months.
third of the adult
Some
children,
have
right?
done it sporadically, some have done it for many years,
Right.
some have done it for many months. I mean,
Right, it's different.
it's very, very different. And one of the things that has been so frustrating for me, Jim, is that there is a cult-like support system out there that encourages cutoffs
Yeah.
rather than repair. In fact, there was a huge piece in the New York Times about this therapist. It was really disgusting. And he was estranged from his family and never wanted to have anything to do with them. And maybe it was warranted, but there are thousands. This particular so-called therapist has thousands of followers and people.
But you're not saying that this has become a cult among the 27 or 29%.
It's become it's
We don't know the
it
percentage
we don't
there.
well, we know that 27% of adult children
Right.
are estranged, but there is this cult-like sort of phenomenon going on where somehow the cutoff is okay versus let's try to put more energy into, can we repair? Maybe we can't repair, but at least to give it a shot, to play out the points of the match, to see how with help,
So what
with strategy,
right.
can we come together.
And maybe the timing is very important that people rethink this,
Yes,
both the kids and the
yes,
parents.
yes,
And so if you're in these one of these periods,
right,
there is possibly this opportunity.
right.
So it's difficult to really figure out who are the real, what percentage are so hardcore
We
that
don't
are
know.
unreachable, right? And whether that still there's a sizable number that can be, and how do you go about intervening at the right time?
It's difficult.
If you just leave it open,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
then when you
You
let them,
try.
you try, you make them realize, or one
Right,
member says, listen, I understand we're going through a very, very tough time. You
right,
want to be
right.
separated, whatever, but I'm here.
Yes,
That's one. And just wait, and hopefully that happens. But
yeah,
to keep reaching out
right. But we've never seen,
is going to be frustrating, right?
Dr. Coleman, who's done just an enormous amount of work in the area, Joshua Coleman, rules of estrangement in that area. I mean, we've never seen these numbers. And of course, he is all about repair, if at all possible. But there's a lot of support, and I think that there may be a lot of support from therapists. If you don't have a family systems modality and being able to help people look at the family system, it really becomes a he said, she said kind of thing. So somebody comes into a therapist's office and said, my parents are the worst parents in the whole world. But, it's so important, Jim, and it's so important for all of you to understand this, to hear the rest of the story. There needs to be a holistic
Right.
perspective.
And what level of estrangement are you talking about? What happened? What are the
Exactly,
facts? And get
exactly.
try as much as possible
Absolutely.
get the full
Exactly.
story.
You need the full story. And when people are in, this is one of the problems with individual psychotherapy, whether you're talking about marital therapy or you're talking about estrangement, if we don't have the rest of the story. I mean, when I worked with kids in Montreal, kids that were in the court system, I never could have gotten anywhere with anybody if I hadn't worked with the family, if at all possible. you get a one-sided, lopsided, narrow perspective about what's going on and what's not
Again, you're
going
talking
on.
about the therapist
Yes,
reaching out
yes,
to
absolutely.
the parent
Right.
and finding out from their point of view what's going on, and then trying to meet with
Yes,
the
exactly.
child, the adult child.
Exactly. I mean, I had a recent situation with a mother who was estranged from her three adult sons.
Hmm.
And she was devastated, and it was several years actually that she'd had any contact with them. And there were all kinds of things that went on, and she moved too much and wasn't as available as she could have. And she's acknowledged all of this. And I said to her, so she called me recently for individual therapy. And I said to her, I said, hey, I want to talk to your sons. And she says, well, I don't know where they're going to want to talk to you. But they did. And you know what happened in like less than 6 sessions? The family is reconciled. I talked to the
You
sons.
intervened
I did.
at a fortunate moment where they were
Absolutely.
an outsider coming
Yes.
in now, and
The sons
they
were
were open.
furious. They
Yeah.
were furious, but I gave them an opportunity to express and to talk and to this and to that. And
I think that, you know what,
was,
as you're talking, I think it can certainly be applied to all kinds of situations
yes,
between countries,
yes,
between
yes.
conflicting ethnic groups and religious groups and so on. That's what we need to, sort of truth and reconciliation.
The reconciliation. And I couldn't believe that in less than 6 sessions, and this is not about me, but it was like, gee, I have to do something here. And I want to reach out. And in fact, these young men and 50-ish, uh, they were really glad.
Right.
And now the family's reconciled.
Because they've been carrying around a tremendous amount of
Right,
anger
right,
and hatred and
right.
rage. It's just
Exactly.
been festering.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so you're helping them very much.
It was great.
But
It was
let me
great.
ask you though, so are some of the reasons, maybe it's been so long for some of these people, do you go back to the original reason
Yes,
that caused these things? And maybe it's better, and then it's like, and they it's better you, okay, you
You
do.
do, but
do.
you help, we can't change history, but you help people emotionally process from the past what didn't happen. You got to bring them to
And
the
understand why
Yes,
perhaps that
yes.
person did what they did.
Right,
And we're all human. We make mistakes
Right.
and we try our best.
right.
But again, if you're dealing with very hurt people, traumatized
You
people
have to do
who
the
are
same thing.
producing traumatized children,
Right. The
then
cycle,
the cycle
it
continues.
goes on.
And
Yes,
if that parent hasn't been helped,
right. It's
it,
not going to
it's
happen.
not going to happen,
Right.
period.
No, exactly, which is why bandage therapy is not something that I would ever endorse. I call it bandage therapy. You have to go back, and it's not going to take 1,000 years to do to really help people emotionally
Well,
process their pain and their anger and everything else.
well, we can maybe just segue for at least a couple minutes into my political reading. And you could talk about again the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this great organization, Combatants for Peace, does that. We've had
Right.
my
Yes.
show.
Yeah.
These are
Yes.
Palestinians
Yeah.
who've been in Israeli prisons who are now out,
Yeah.
meeting with
Right.
Israeli soldiers, not ex-IDF
Great.
people,
Great.
and they are now meeting and in the most bitter of times,
Yes.
seeking to get to understand
Exactly.
where people are coming from.
Yeah.
What is it that made you do what you did? What do you feel the way that you do? And that's so crucial.
It is so crucial, and I know you had talked
Not be
about
done.
the orchestra, wasn't it? There a
Yeah, East-West
Yeah.
Orchestra
Yeah.
as well.
They-
Bringing people together to play music, to break bread together and so on.
Exactly, exactly. And
Break the
to
ice.
break the ice. But it's a mindset. And
Yes,
going back to my article,
mindset.
I have to tell you, Jim, because you haven't read the article
No,
yet,
I
which
haven't.
I'm very excited for you to read.
Well,
One of the parts in this Dan's Papers article that will be in Dan's Papers, I think on October the 25th, cooperation begins at an early age. And I'm going to read you what I wrote, and you'll tell me what you think, okay?
okay.
From a very early age, we as parents and teachers and religious leaders have a responsibility to teach our children about the importance of finding ways to get along. This mindset can be easily reinforced in the playgrounds, at home, at synagogues, churches, mosques, and at school. Instead of only focusing on winning, perhaps extra gold stars and grades can be given to children who are encouraged to incorporate a win-win cooperative mindset. These early lessons prepare them to better negotiate and deal with the ups and downs of life as adults. Do you like the
Yeah,
paragraph?
of course. But good, absolutely.
Yes.
But those buts, but
But
what if you're dealing with adults, parents who have never been
I know.
trained to don't even have a clue as to what a good parent is. What
But
that's about. You got to start somewhere.
but the teachers, we have an
Well, even the
enormous
teachers,
opportunity,
we
Jim.
do, we do.
When I was running the one of the directors of the school social services program in Greater Montreal, and even as a school social worker in the schools in Montreal, we spent most of our time, more time with the students than the parents. Really, I mean, we have them for all these hours. We have such opportunity to teach them about
But if
cooperation, and we have opportunities to teach them about relationships, to help them, with mental health issues.
but
If
if you're living in a culture that above all else stresses winning and
Yeah,
competition
yes.
and beating one's opponent, it's hard to bring all of that together
But we could
in a
differentiate.
balance.
But we could differentiate. I mean, as a tennis champion, I want to beat my opponent 6-love. There's no question about that. But you can help children to differentiate between me, beating somebody on a baseball field and the cooperative part of what it means to be a member of the human
Of the
race and of a
team.
team where and I think it would be great that kids would get gold stars and extra grades for, really encouraging the mindset of cooperation.
No, I understand what you're saying, and as
Yes,
a but again, as a I played sports myself a lot, and I follow the team, meaning the Yankees and so on. But if you look at these sports teams, there's tremendous rivalry.
But that's different in sports. That
Well, it's a team, but there are also the media and the culture sets up competition. And
Right,
believe me, we got the Yankees in Boston tomorrow starting, and I'm not hating Boston, but boy, we want to really beat them. So,
But that's
uh,
sports.
yeah, but the sports has become more and more violent
I understand.
with people,
I
with the
understand
players
that.
toward each other. They're beginning to suffer so
Well,
many injuries and so on.
that's a real problem.
But it's a problem you have to look at the larger macro situation where the system is pushing them to that point.
But if we put
Yeah.
sports aside,
All right. Well,
okay, if that's only one aspect of our life, which is sports, which has been important for you, which has been very important for me. But if we're together and we have a shared task, which is something that kids can do all the time, how do we work as a team? How do these little kids in elementary school learn to solve the problem together? That's the kind of mindset that breeds
collective way.
Yes, that breeds collective thinking and sharing and teamwork. And
Now, what do you think
what?
a Donald Trump
Oh,
fan would say?
it's crazy.
Well, no,
Probably.
Tommy, he's already calling Mandana and his people and policies. He's a communist. So
Yeah.
this is the scapegoat buggy boo.
It's about winners and losers. I mean, that's
Well, but
black
that's
and
what
white, all in
America's
nothing.
been about too. A sizable percentage of our people within this culture are rooted in that.
Right. But
And
we have choices. That's the culture. But we have choices as individuals who we want to associate with, who we want to marry, who we want to work for, who our friends are going to be. And if you're choosing to have a culture in your own life that just embraces this, I'm a winner, you're a loser, you're right, I'm wrong kind of a mindset, that's on you. I don't want that. I want to be around people who are looking toward win-win resolutions, Jim.
well, if you're the coach of the Yankees, you better win this
No,
thing.
I don't, not
No.
different. That's different.
Well, wait, if you're
That's
going to
different.
an elite school you better do a good paper and get out.
That's
And
true. That's
but
the
you made
individual.
a choice. But often our choices, this is a more from a sociological point, our choices are structured by socioeconomic status, by
Right,
religion, by
right.
culture, by just randomness, the luck of the draw. Um, one little short little example. I went, as you know, I went to Columbia grad school, and I enjoyed it enormously. Came from a state university,
Mhm.
undergraduate background, so it was very enlightening. It was very
Right.
interesting. Now, okay, we had one class where I think it was a methodology class, and we were
Uh-huh.
supposed to all get together. We were involved in
Okay.
4 or 5 each of us,
Right.
particular group, and our grade was dependent
Ah,
collectively on our fellow
okay.
classmates and doing their job. Couldn't do it.
Why?
Why? Because these are very competitive people. It broke down, and the professor understood
So
it and had to
interesting.
change it midway because everybody was I wasn't necessarily, but there were so many people, so many of the students were at each other's throats. Why? Because they were fearful. Hey, this schmuck over here isn't going to do. He's not doing what his business, what he needs to do, and he's going to cause me to get, God forbid, an A minus or a B plus
Uh-huh.
because your grade was a collective.
So
So we're not talking
interesting.
about an Israeli kibbutzim
No,
50 years
no,
ago.
no,
You
interesting.
you work all together to you know uh, get the crops together and so on.
Well,
Okay.
when I think about sports, and I played high school, volleyball and basketball, which of course were team sports,
Yes.
whereas everything else I did, it was individual, badminton and tennis. But I remember working very well with my teammates. I remember, and I haven't thought about this in a million years, Jim, when I played doubles, in tennis provincially,
But you didn't play that much.
no, I did.
Let's be straight.
I
You
know.
were a really
I
good single player, and you didn't like. So
But when I
when you
was,
did play doubles, yeah,
my partners and I played mixed, and I haven't thought about this in a long time. We worked together
yeah. But come on,
as a
did you
team.
get mad at times that they
No,
messed up?
no,
Well, it's okay.
no,
You're
no. It's
Canadian,
my Canadian way, the
but
Canadian gentle, kinder, sort of way. But I do think that this, you
that's
know,
been incorporated into families too,
it
right?
does. And I mean, yes,
Well,
we want to win, but at what cost? What price are we paying by our total focus just being on winning and you losing? And
and no
yeah,
buts here, but
yeah,
and
yes, yes,
when you have a marital situation, which has ended up, let's say, in a divorce,
right,
and there are children involved,
yes,
and there are still, because maybe one or both of the parents are still immature in their emotional
right,
stability or whatever
right,
growth,
yeah,
where they're still competing for that
yeah,
child,
yeah,
and that,
yeah,
establishing a united front
yeah,
becomes almost impossible if that
right,
other member, that X or whatever,
right, right,
has the capability of doing it.
right. And that happens far
It
too
happens
often.
a tremendous amount. Right.
Really, it does. And of course, it harms everybody. It harms the child, it harms the
Absolutely.
individuals.
It
And
gets us back to the point was maybe like using your formula and so on. Maybe you should think long and hard
yes,
about a lot of
a lot of
things,
things,
but
yes,
it's a huge, huge commitment to have a child.
absolutely.
And perhaps that will not be what many, many people who marry and love each other very much should be doing or not doing, having children.
Well, I think the birth rate is down. The
Well,
marriage rate is down.
well,
And
but we have
we're
counter
going through
movement.
we're
We are
going
going
through
through.
a lot of flux. We're going through a lot of flux. Uh,
There's great calls to go back to a
a more
more
traditional,
traditional and have the kids and
right?
kids and so on
Right.
and so on.
It's all very complicated. And
Right.
yet, I think what's really, really important is that we do try to find ways to heal and repair ourselves,
Mhm.
I think first of all, and
Yeah.
then relationships, and then of course, our
The
our
larger
our communities, our
communities.
our our societies. And if that was a mindset, if that was a goal, maybe we wouldn't achieve 100%. I'm sure we wouldn't, but we would be on a path,
At
on
least we wouldn't be banishing people,
banishing people
getting
from
violent because
exactly,
we can
exactly,
disagree, but
exactly.
let's not disagree
No,
disagreeably.
exactly.
We can disagree and emotionally and
Yes,
vehemently, but stop short of
yes,
constantly putting down
yes,
people, using
yeah,
names,
exactly.
and just
Yeah.
violence.
Well, there's so much anger and there's so
That's
much
right.
rage,
It
and
is. Yeah.
people are acting out
Yeah.
in ways on the streets, in the
Mhm.
media, in ways, talk about a lack of civility. I mean,
Well, that has a lot to
really,
do also with a society that has made a lot of people um, redundant.
yes.
And
Well,
and and
yes,
and so
yes.
that's not stupid. I mean, 300,000 people now are going to be unemployed. Federal,
Unemployed.
is there any mention of what they're going to do?
No,
Transition? What
no.
are they supposed to do?
No, exactly. I
Because
know many people who
they
have,
don't care.
MBA degrees
Oh, sure.
who've lost their jobs and can't find anything, and they're 60 years
You're in
old.
your audience here.
No, it's a real, but I think
Yeah.
each of us, I think it would be wonderful if each of us sort of took on a little slice, in our own lives, in our communities, politically, that
Yeah.
we are, that would be committed in some small way to make a difference toward healing,
I
coming together,
again, this last
right?
sentence,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
The country is broken, yes.
yes.
And it goes farther, says the world will always be broken, but that repair it anyway.
Repair it anyway. That's the
That
thing,
need not be permanent.
right? Well, there's constant repair. I mean, our furniture falls apart. I mean, so the people, I mean, we know that we have to repair things,
Or
things we need to restore.
restorative justice, yeah.
And here we have, the need to restore, repair relationships,
Past hurts and
communities,
traumas,
past hurts, trauma,
apologies to people.
but there has to be the desire to do it. People have to care enough to want to take that step,
Well,
Jim.
yes, yes, yes.
And it is
But
3:57. I
oh
don't know
wow,
what
already?
to say.
Wow.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness. We could talk and talk
Yes,
and talk, and I do want you to edit my piece.
we're
But
gonna
listen, everybody, everybody, listen. I love the fact that you tune in to the Ask Beatty show every single week. I appreciate so much that you take your time. I know there are a lot of other things that you can do. And I do want to leave you with my two weekly messages. They're the same messages that I have been giving you for the last, 13 and a half years. And the first is to have a mindset where you are really living your life in ways that are in your best interest, that you think about your mental health, your relationships, your self-care. And if you find that you are off track, as we all get off track from time to time, to be willing to acknowledge and address and resolve as best as you can, with help, without help, whatever is going to be, helpful to you, to live a happy and joyful life. And of course, as Jim and I have been talking today, that we all need to do a much, much, much better job to learn to respect and understand and have a mindset of healing and repair.
and
And
I must say this, Beatty, thank you. I'm on track.
you're on track.
Thanks to you
Thank you.
and living a just joyous, happy, wonderful life.
Well, we're very fortunate.
We are.
So listen, everybody, thank you again so much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you, my wonderful producers at the Progressive Radio Network. Couldn't do it without you. And I will see you next week and every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be good to yourself and be good to others. Bye-bye, everybody.